This is White Plains Week, the weekly news roundup. With your moderator, John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And Peter Katz, noted broadcaster and journalist. White Plains Week. What's happened? Who are the newsmakers? And what's in store for the future? The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented Fridays at 7:30 and again on Mondays at 7 p.m. here on Channel 76. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world, and all of you power switchers out there. Throw your switches now. John Bailey with you, White Plains Week, the City News Roundup show with Jim Benerofe, the Dean of Journalism in the City of White Plains. On my left, my partner for 16 years, baby. And on the right, the anchor for all seasons, Peter Katz, with us since 2007.
When you said throw your power switches, you didn't mean turn off your television set, did you?
No.
Oh, okay. Just
because
wanted to
without your power on, you can't get us. Right, exactly. So keep your power on, but no matter who you switch to or stay with. Exactly. Now, here, we're going to turn the switch on Jim Benerofe for the headlines.
And here are the headlines for the week of June 3rd, 2016. 9 out of 10 White Plains residents, electricity users, accept sustainable Westchester Con Ed Solutions all green energy. This week continues our election feature, the Trump moment, and a new one, the Clinton clock. State Education Department releases 75% of the 2016 assessment test questions. MTA $27 billion capital plan opens up an old rail line in the Bronx to give 100,000 Bronx residents and Connecticut residents access to Penn Station by rail. Governor Cuomo signs deal to begin LaGuardia Airport new terminal. Governor Cuomo dedicates $10 billion to housing the homeless safely. White Plains-based medical marijuana provider investigated for augmenting marijuana oils from Minnesota lab, with oils from Minnesota lab. Comic-Con convenes at the White Plains Library 10 to 4 Saturday. Admission is free. Annual art show takes place in downtown White Plains Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 4. The bicycle criterion races roll Sunday from 7 to 2 in downtown. Jazz in the Gardens at the Women's Club will transform its blue gardens where men and girls will come and go like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars, June 9th. June 18th, Tibbetts Park turns into a colonial village as White Plains celebrates the reading of the Declaration of Independence. Juneteenth celebration and parade scheduled for Saturday, June 11th, 11 a.m. until nighttime. Charles Bradley III, former City Corporation Counsel, passes away.
Thank you, Jim. And now, without that, we're going to the feature that I've been waiting for, the Trump moment. Peter Katz has been following.
The Trump moment?
That's right. And there is the Trump moment. The Trump moment.
Should we have some fanfare?
We need a
something?
sponsor.
What
We
is
need a
this?
sponsor. Right. Anyway, here you go.
The craziness continues in the presidential campaign. This week, Paul Ryan, the House Speaker, reluctantly said that he will be voting for Donald Trump. Actually, he didn't come out and say it. What he did was he wrote an op-ed editorial piece for his hometown newspaper. and published it that way instead of going on, you know, like Meet the Press or Face the Nation.
He didn't embrace him on
embrace
camera.
Donald Trump.
Oh, man, where's the hug, Paul? Where's the hug?
And the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has been making the rounds of the talk shows promoting a book that he wrote. And he, too, is reluctantly saying that he'll support Donald Trump without really embracing the guy.
Right. And in your continuing surveillance of the Trump
Well,
papers,
this week I looked at the Trump Financial Disclosure Form. It's a federal form that presidential candidates for federal office must file. And in that, he shows that he has income sources from about 500, it's actually over 500 various entities. Among the entities was something that goes back, a little while here in White Plains, actually, something called Trump Mark White Plains LLC, which is the entity that was set up when he leased his name to the city center project, which was being built. You may remember at the time that many people had the impression that Trump was a major investor and this was his project, and we were so proud to have attracted Donald Trump to build a building in White Plains. It turned out that he just leased his name to put on the building to help market it. And in fact, according to this federal disclosure form, that's one thing that he does a lot of. All around the world, the Trump name appears on various buildings, which he really has no interest in, other
he
than
has no inventory.
Other than leasing his name. And he has various of these Trump Mark LLCs set up to do that. Also, something very interesting, you may remember way back when New York City just couldn't get things together at the Wallman skating rink, and it sat unused for years and years and years.
Couldn't freeze the ice.
Trump came forward and volunteered as a public service to take that project and build it and make a great skating rink for the public. Well, it turns out that actually what he did was he made a good business opportunity for Donald Trump, because last year his income off of the Wallman rink was $13 million.
Yeah. Well, you know, don't you think that's what we need? Somebody who can use a public facility to make money? Instead of losing?
Not when you present it as being a public service, something you're going to do to help benefit the residents of New York City and others who might want to ice skate at the Wallman rink.
Perhaps we should have just as much luck with Playland.
But some other things happened on the campaign trail. There was more violence outside a couple of Trump rallies. There was Donald Trump taking on, once again, the governor of New Mexico, and then backtracking and saying that he embraces her, and he holds out an olive branch to her and thinks she's wonderful.
Following Paul Ryan's example.
Then after doing that, attacking her again.
Yes. Well, it's all over the place.
You can't make this stuff up.
But the Hillary Clinton clock is ticking, too.
Hillary Clinton made what some believe to be her most powerful speech ever this past week, in which she took on Donald Trump without mincing words.
Yes. She said that he threatened the world order. Is there a world order anymore?
Characterized him as dangerous.
Yes, definitely.
Said that we have to keep him away from the nuclear trigger at all costs. Dangerous stuff.
Can the anti-Barry Goldwater atomic bomb spot be far off? I don't think so. Yeah.
Glenn Beck, one of the right-wing radio and television people, you may remember the name.
Yes.
He was suspended for a week from XM Sirius Radio, which carries a program, a talk show that he does, because according to them, he seemed to agree with a guest who suggested that Donald Trump should be assassinated.
Well, that he should have been suspended. Perhaps fired.
I must say, talk like that.
Yes.
On the airwaves.
It's irresponsible.
Brings this to a new low in politics in this country.
You know, I was not aware that but that is just, that's why we have 7-second delays. To
Well, you shouldn't.
blip that
You
stuff out.
shouldn't even need a 7-second delay because that's something which is
It
just
shouldn't be said.
unthinkable.
It shouldn't be said. No.
It shouldn't be thought.
Why do we have so many shootings in this country?
We had a shooting
Yeah,
this week
right.
out in Los Angeles, UCLA, in the Westwood area of Los Angeles. Turned out that the fellow who did the shooting not only had a little arsenal, but he had a hit list of people to be killed. And in fact, they found that the professor at UCLA was on the hit list. A female was found dead who was on this guy's hit list. Guns are still a problem in this country, and we still see all kinds of ridiculous arguments being made about why we should not do something.
But people have gotten into a habit of deciding to solve their personal problems by killing the persons they are having problems with. This is not a good trend. It's not a trend, it's an epidemic.
Anyway, there's a medical epidemic which you took a look at this morning at an event.
Yeah, right. We attended an event over at the Bridge Deck where we had a spokesperson from the Alzheimer's Association talk about the symptoms of Alzheimer's. And I just want to run down some of them because it's important to note this. 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's disease is that if memory loss disrupts daily life, challenges in planning or solving problems, difficulty in completing familiar tasks, confusion with time and place, trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships like stumbling downstairs, not seeing where you're going, new problems with words in speaking or writing, and misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps and find them, and decreased or poor judgment. And the ninth is withdrawal from work or social activities.
You isolate yourself. In other words,
Yes.
if you find yourself feeling better being isolated than being in social situations, that may be a warning sign
And
of
changes in mood and personality. And you can contact the Alzheimer's organization for more information if you think you might have some of these symptoms. And at the Bridge Deck on June the 20th, if you can play bridge at the Bridge Deck, and your fee for playing that day all day will benefit Alzheimer's research.
I don't think there's anybody that doesn't have one or two of those symptoms all the time.
Well, it's true, but I mean those are the symptoms, and if you experience all of those or even half them, you should have yourself checked by your physician.
Do not take notes as you're watching this program. Thank you.
Right, but one
What did you
should
say?
be aware. No, actually, people should take notes. There'll be a quiz. Now, shocker of the week, and this is something we found this week in talking with Con Edison, Con Ed Solutions. They told me that 90% of White Plains residents, some 17,000 that take Con Ed electric service, accepted 15,000 of 17,000 accepted the Con Ed Solutions all-green proposal.
Right. What happened was the city passed legislation saying that we're going to deliver to Sustainable Westchester, this group that's promoting green energy, among other things, all of our customers, residential and small business, who buy their electricity from Con Edison. And they did that, and there was a mailing sent out, and you had the option of rejecting being switched over to this Sustainable Westchester
and 9
contract.
of people decided not to reject it and stayed and decided to go with the White Plains green option.
And a 90% acceptance rate is pretty
phenomenal,
good.
Phenomenal, even for a negative
Sustainable
option.
Westchester had said at the time this was proposed that they anticipate 75% of the people going along, and 25% exercising their right to opt out. In the case of White Plains, only 10% exercised their right to opt out.
We interviewed, WPCR interviewed, if we can have the next slide, please, of Mr. Richard Raithbon, Vice President of Retail Commodity Services for Con Ed Solutions. He says that as of June the 1st, as your meter reading date comes up this month, you will be switched over. And if you have any questions when you get your bill in July or want to switch back, you can call either of those two numbers. They're the same number. And he also told me that the green rate, which of those who opted to go with what the city has suggested, will pay 0.3 cents per kilowatt higher, 0.0768 cents per kilowatt.
Now,
and it's locked in for 2 years. And the basic rate, which is 0.0738, will fluctuate.
Well, we were told that the basic rate would be locked in for 2 years also, and the green rate, which would be higher, would also be locked in. So that's a slightly different twist on what we were told when this was proposed. We were also told that the objective was to save White Plains residents money on their electricity cost. But as it turns out, by going into this, you probably will end up paying more
on the green option, 0.3 cents more. Now, after 2 years, when they look at
not only 0.3 cents more, but also on the basic cost, which was supposed to be lower, it appears that it may be slightly higher.
Well, that is the average.
I know
last year.
certainly in my case, it would be more than 1 cent per kilowatt hour higher if I had chosen to switch, because I'm on what's called the EL7 rate, which is a rate that Con Edison had set up many years ago to promote the sale of electricity for house heating.
Right. Now, as this goes forward, we'll be following this, but after the 2 years, they will decide what the next rates will be when they continue you. And I was told that they have already hedged or bought the green energy that they're going to be supplying. So they know pretty much what it's going to be. Well, what the demand is based on their best estimates. So Con Ed is now going to supply 90% people with green energy.
Right. The interesting thing, though, John, is that here we have all of these customers in White Plains throughout Westchester, various municipalities,
and these rates
being put into now what they say green energy, electricity generated from renewable sources, being hydropower, being wind power, being solar power.
Right.
Why haven't we been using these sources all along?
Well,
if they can do this now, why couldn't they have done it a year ago or 2 years ago?
Well, it is an interesting question. Now, what happened in Cape Cod when they did a program similar to Sustainable Westchester was that they ran into the hottest summer and the coldest winter back to back, and that's why their rates are going up. Yeah. Now, theoretically, it will depend on what happens over the next 2 years.
Right.
So it's up in the air how it will continue after the 2 years. Now,
the thing that most people don't understand, of course, is that all electrons are the same. The electricity is the same. If you looked at a wire and you could see the electrons, one's generated by renewable sources are exactly the same as ones generated by traditional sources.
Maybe your wires will glow green. And that,
I don't think so.
No. So let's see. Would you care to reveal what your ESCO is charging? You don't want to do that?
I don't really know. They just sent me a letter this was on gas. And I think the same ESCO covers both my gas and my electric.
Okay.
One other interesting thing which many people were surprised to learn was that Sustainable Westchester would be buying the electricity for us essentially from Con Edison. This Con Ed Solutions is an independent entity, so Con Ed says.
Well,
but Con Ed is Con Ed.
Well, Con Ed Solutions made the best rate.
I think a lot of the ESCOs buy from Con Ed, too.
Yeah. Right.
So you're taking out of one pocket and putting in another pocket. The question is, why are people making extra profits with all of these
Well, in
electrons
order to
being
bring
floated
about
around?
change, Peter, you have to do it in a way that is profitable. Otherwise, people won't do it. Affordable housing comes to mind.
Ah, affordable
Yes,
housing.
right.
Has anything happened on the affordable housing front recently, John?
No, but Governor Cuomo, the hardest working politician on the planet, has done several things this week that absolutely are amazing. Number one, he has done a, he announced the LaGuardia expansion has been okay, signed, sealed, and delivered. There's the new terminal that's going to be built at LAG, the airport. And this
LGA,
is
actually.
LGA?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you know, I don't fly in there very often. So anyway, this is going to supposedly be done by the end of 2021. And the deal is all set and financed. And they'll begin by demolishing the first parking garage right in front of the terminal. And then he also announced yesterday $10 billion to house the homeless around the New York City and across the state. And what was fascinating about that release was, if I can find it here, was that they have surveyed every a multi-agency team. Could we check that list I read? Okay, a multi-agency team inspected 916 homeless shelters across the state over a 35-day period and found 25,815 violations of habitability and safety standards that affected the health and safety of the shelter residents.
You know, homeless advocates have been making those allegations for years, and the politicians have been denying that there's anything
congratulations to Governor Cuomo
for finally admitting something.
$10 billion is a ton of money, and it's long needed. And they put on the site. I did the whole press release because it's very important.
On your website,
my website,
WPCNR.com.
and you can see the penalties that they're going to go after these hideous little places that, with the government dollar, okay, have not been treating the homeless
It's government dollars, and in many cases it's government operations.
Right.
And in many cases, the homeless people don't want to go there, and they say that.
Right.
And it's been reported time and time again.
Now, last week we told you we heard about a new MTA capital plan, and one of those parts of the capital plan was a new rail line, which is shown here. And that is the red line.
Well, that's
wait,
all
it's
of
not
Metro
really
North.
new.
That's all of Metro North that you're looking at.
On the left is the regular Metro North, Harlem, and Hudson lines. On the right is a new proposed rail line to be using all of the Amtrak tracks that go from Penn Station up to Boston.
For commuter purposes.
Yes, and this is going to be supposed to be completed by about 2020.
The Amtrak tracks are commingled with the Metro North tracks. Okay?
They are.
It's the New Haven line.
They are, but they have not. This comes from the Bronx Borough President's office. Sam Goodman.
The difference is that there's an Amtrak route into Penn Station.
Right, and they're going to be able to use that, Peter. They're going to be using the Amtrak lines, and they're going to build 4 stations at Co-op City, Parkchester, and Van Nest, and down at Hunts Point.
Existing track is being used.
Yes, existing track. There will be some improvements to the track, but this is going to give direct access to Penn Station to over 100,000 Bronx residents. They don't have it.
Why couldn't you have done that years ago?
Yeah.
You know, that's a good question. It has been thought about for years.
I don't know if this is the same thing.
Yeah.
There's an old right-of-way that's about 17 miles long in Westchester. Now, I don't know if that's what they're talking about.
No, it's not.
No.
No, this is actual
No,
traffic.
that's the
Amtrak
abandoned
uses.
right-of-way. This is
Yeah.
this is currently used by Amtrak. The long-haul trains use this. I used to, decades ago, I used to ride it from Penn Station to go to Boston.
So this is not what we thought, a disruption of the Bronx in any way, except for building the new station.
No, it's a question of how come you're trumpeting this now when it's been there all along? It could have been used all along, and why were you opposed to doing this for so long a period of time?
Well, they couldn't get things together. But once again, you see the sheer force of will of Andrew Cuomo perhaps being behind this. And I got to tell you, he has done a lot. But that $10 billion for the homeless, which nobody has cared about for years,
Yeah, well,
tremendous.
it's interesting. The MTA capital projects plan they put out, which covers years 15 through
they
2019.
mentioned something about White Plains.
They do make mention of the White Plains train station redevelopment.
Yeah.
And interestingly, they characterize it as being led by the city of White Plains. They do point out, however, that it's their intention to have an architect, a single architect, design a lot of stations for MTA. The implication, just based on what's in this capital project book that they put out, is that they're going to choose the architect who then is going to design a station, including the White Plains station, to suit the whims of the MTA.
Yes, it seems to be the implication. But hey, what happened to the hotel on top of the station, which would be a convention center and all sorts of stuff with easy access to Manhattan when you wanted it without the Manhattan hassle?
Yeah.
When the Manhattan prices. What happened to that idea, right? What would you think? We need to mention the death of Charles Bradley III. If you could have that slide, please. And Jim, you knew Mr. Bradley, who was the corporation
we all
counsel.
knew him. So many people in White Plains knew him.
I believe 1982 to 1986. Right?
I think he was in there during the late 70s, too.
Right.
Not sure.
Yeah, he was very active during the Del Vecchio administration.
Right.
Yeah.
And his wife, Eileen Earle, we all know, from her service for the city of White Plains. He was a very nice guy. I mean,
In the obituary, they did mention that he had a great sense of humor, and that is one of the things I really.
Yeah, I
particularly
was
about
about to say, a corporation counsel for the city of White Plains often has very, very heavy things on his mind, but here was a guy who was just a pleasure to be around, and you could joke around with him, you could have fun, just a very, very personable, nice guy, and as honest as the day is long.
Right. Well, the show is not long enough, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be talking about the test next week. John Bailey, good night for Peter and Jim, and good night for White Plains Week.
White Plains Week has been a presentation of White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com, in cooperation with Channel 76. Comments may be emailed to WPCNR@AOL.com. The copyrighted print White Plains Cityscape by Leonard Weber is used courtesy of the White Plains Presbyterian Church. For information on its availability, you may contact the church at 761-8585. The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented Fridays at 7:30 and again on Mondays at 7 p.m. here on Channel 76. For White Plains Week, this is Seth Benerofe speaking.